Well, Brandon, now we know why Naomi last week showed up at the building, as I reported, and then left and did not defend her title as advertised. She is pregnant. And Stephanie McMahon interviewed Jimmy and Trinity / Naomi, as she was interchangeably called, about it to break that news. And then she, back in the ring, she's been playing a crazed heel. And she went from super nice and sweet and a normal person who you're happy for to then being like this maniac yelling at Adam Pearce. And I was like, okay, this is kind of like weird. Just, choose what you're going to do. Either kind of stay a little bit more in character in the podcast or just be nice and go, hey, being pregnant changes everything. I'm happy now. But what saved it for me, and I actually really liked it, is she talked about her hormones jumping more than a disco. Mm-hmm. And so she's like, you can imagine her being calm on a podcast and then flipping out. And not wanting to completely abandon her heel act by, being cackling and stuff like that, and being cocky and saying, in 9 months and change, she'll be back, even if there's a baby in her arms, taking this title back. So ultimately, I mean, different people are going to have different opinions. I see in the chat before the show a variety of opinions on this, but I actually thought it was handled well. I mean, this is an era of WWE and real, and I mean, whatever, everyone breaking character left and right. I don't like it when it happens in the narrative of the TV show. That's kind of my last bastion of a rule that should be followed. I think it's not out of tradition. It's so counterproductive to take you out of the immersion in the world you occupy. I thought they found a pretty entertaining balance between the two. What do you think?
Yeah, I thought it started off on a bit of a rougher note. When she was crying, it was sort of like, okay, she's kind of gonna drop the heel act here, or probably should drop the heel act. And the crowd wanted to cheer her. It was a very, genuine, honest reaction. I don't fault her for getting emotional about the situation. I mean, made perfect sense, but it also doesn't align with the heel character that she's been portraying. But then, the line about the hormones kind of worked, because then it thinks, oh, okay, well, she could be emotional and she might cry 1 second and then turn around the next. Like, I thought that she did a good enough job weaving it in and making it work. It wasn't a perfect segment. There are various ways that you can poke holes in the content there, but I thought that they got out of it well enough. I mean, they got out well enough with her character largely intact, if that is the character that she wants to continue to play, and they set the stage for whatever they need to do next to get the women's world title back on somebody who's going to be around.
So let's talk about just what this does to obviously personal life, and pregnancy takes precedent, and good for her. But it does kind of interrupt something that was going pretty well, which is, it's of all the timing, she's had a long career, to have this, I was going to say to have this happen to her, but of course she's elated. So I have to watch, kind of the words I choose, make sure it applies. But it is kind of a bummer that she was so, I mean, and again, there's some people don't like her current character, but I think it was entertaining. I think she found a groove. I think WWE was pushing her harder than they planned to, because she suddenly did become quite more entertaining and more over, I think, than she had been. So yeah, of all times for it to happen, I mean, it is about, because I was looking forward to seeing selfishly, I was looking forward to seeing the journey of her character. And who knows how she, I mean, who knows in 9 months how she's going to feel about, coming back right away. She was riding high in her career. Everybody has different feelings on this, but it's possible that she's going to, look her baby in the eye and be like, I don't want to leave. I want to be home. I mean, so who knows? But overall, it's bittersweet is not the right way to put it. But I want to point out, like, to her credit, I think people are a little more bummed out at the timing than they would be if this had happened a year ago. That's all. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. It definitely, I would say, I've seen people in the chat saying it could be the best run of her career. Right there, Sadler saying best run of her career. And I would agree. I think that this is probably the best work that she's done, at least in WWE. I didn't follow her run in TNA. I know that was received largely pretty well, but this has been the best work that she's done, at least that I have seen. And even though I haven't been entirely on board with the heel character from the start. I think it's gotten progressively better as it's gone on, and I thought that they did a good job getting her into the title picture. I was down in a sense on her cashing in the way that she did, just because it interrupted such an incredible match at the time. But hindsight coming out of it, I mean, it worked fine. And as a heel, you kind of have that in your back pocket. You could say, I ruined this incredible match by coming out here and cashing in. So I thought it largely worked, and she was doing good work. But we'll see. And like you said, 9, 10, 11 months, however long it is. Was Becky was out about a year, a little bit more.
Sounds about right. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
she didn't come back immediately. I remember that. I know that. Yeah. Might have been a little more than a year, but
Yeah.
yeah. And I mean, hopefully she is open-minded to however she feels and I don't know how far along in the pregnancy she is or anything like that. Maybe she says so on in the podcast with Stephanie that dropped after Raw. Sadler Vision 3 said, yeah, it kind of sucks she was going to be out during the best run of her career. I do wonder when she comes back if Crouch is going to pop. I mean, it's a kind of, I don't know that she can actually remain a heel. And so in WWE, you might want to plan for that. Maybe like Ryan Soloria goes, in 9 months, she comes back with Jade as champion. And maybe at that point, Jade is a heel. Or that's a way for Jade to turn heel if the babyface run's not working. They have a lot of options. They are going to be obviously they'll keep in touch with her. And if she is eager to come back, they should have a plan in mind for how to take advantage of her, because she had some momentum here and a following. And this is a moment people are going to remember. I mean, yeah, I mean, we can say the timing wasn't great because people were enjoying her character and she was having a hot run. But this was a big moment. People feel a little bit extra bond with her, seeing Jimmy and her on the couch, just so happy, celebrating this moment. So yeah, I mean, she can come back and cosplay a heel, but the fans are going to cheer her. I think that would be a headwind that'd be tough to battle unless they have just a super over baby face. But I don't think people's memories are going to fade a year from now over how kind of cool people felt getting to share this moment with her was.
I think that they were always, in a sense, fighting a bit of an uphill battle with her as a heel anyway. And it worked in this sense because she wasn't a super over character. I mean, the glow thing had kind of run its course. There was no real reason to continue on with that. And so they were able to get away with the heel character for the time being. But like you said, when you bring in a very personal moment like this that they connect with her on, and then you add to the fact that, generally speaking, Trinity, the person, has been a well-received individual within the pro wrestling space. People have always tended to like her. She had a very positive reputation on Total Divas during that era, and people got to know her through that show. So I think it'll be quite hard to put her in a heel role when she's back.
Yep. All right. We'll throw up a couple other comments on this in the chat and then move on. Sadler Version 3 said, in a real life happy situation like this, I'm not going to be snarky and complain about kayfabe character work. I was fine with the promo and the crowd enjoyed the segment. And I think the line about hormones are jumping like a disco was all the cover they really needed. Kavanti Small says Naomi's character is sort of manic, so her all over the place promo style sort of is part of her gimmick. Derek Hubbard said, I thought it was cool the way the pregnancy was handled on television. I actually enjoyed the manner in which she swayed between the lines of real life and character work. It's also nice to see how women are allowed to celebrate and embrace being pregnant on television in a pro wrestling context. Eric Moy predicts she's going to get the biggest pop when she decides to come back. Derek Mitchell said Naomi was all over the place in her promo. She was crying, then trying to get back into character. This is one of the aspects the performers face in the women's division if you decide to have kids. Kavanti Small says, happy for Naomi and Jim, but sad for the Raw women's division. Naomi really breathed life into the division that needed a spark since WrestleMania. In a way, it kind of clears away a heel who is gaining some sort of, I don't know how to, inconvenient, unexpected, positive vibes from the crowd because they're just entertained by her. It does actually, it clears some of the awkwardness of babyfaces having to face a popular heel. Like a job, I say this all the time, not the only job, but the primary job of a heel is to make sure the babyface is more over when you're done with them. If they're at your level, obviously some babyfaces get fed to heel, so the heel gets built up. But if you're talking title contender or main event feud with another main eventer, job is to make sure that they stay over. You don't get yourself over at their expense in terms of being cheered. And Naomi's going to have a headwind as far as that went. So if you're a top tier babyface on Raw, you might be, a consolation prize and having to say goodbye to somebody who you might enjoy as a coworker, and we're enjoying seeing her work. Is now there won't be a popular heel who's gaining some momentum, and maybe crowds are choosing to cheer her over you.
Yeah.
Darrell adds, what Naomi did tonight was good. It was different. I liked it. And Sai T says, getting pregnant isn't a heel move, LOL. She'll be gone for a year, and then they'll have a send-off moment. Let's see. Darrell says, fans are going to be fans at the end of the day, and when real things happen, the character doesn't matter. Trying to see if there's anything else there. Yeah, that's pretty good. All right, so let's pause here, Brandon, and just introduce ourselves in the show, and then we'll get on to analyzing and reacting to other content. This is the Wade Keller Pro Wrestling Post Show for Monday, August 18th, 2025. I'm Wade Keller, host of the show, editor, publisher, and founder of the long-running Pro Wrestling Torch weekly newsletter, one of the latest copies on Hulk Hogan on my desk here. And you can get PDF copies and dive back all the way to the late 1980s of my coverage of wrestling with a VIP subscription in our vast, unmatched library of contemporaneous wrestling coverage. I also am the editor of PWTorch.com, our main website. Hope you're checking that out every day. We have news stories and also one-of-a-kind editorials, commentaries, flashbacks from 5, 10, 20, even 30 years ago. My Raw reports from 30 years ago appear on there regularly. Live coverage. We have immersive G1 coverage of all the events. You can jump to the Japan results section and catch up on those and get match recommendations from a great team contributing to our Japan coverage. And also we'll be live covering this weekend's AW pay-per-view, and we'll continue, of course, to have our TV coverage of all the shows throughout the week. So hope you're checking out PWTorch.com. And also I'm host of various podcasts, including this, the Wade Keller Pro Wrestling Post Show. I host on our PWTorch YouTube channel live after Raw, Dynamite, and SmackDown, and then the show gets distributed to the masses on our podcast feed afterwards. Search Wade Keller in your podcast app, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, any Android app, wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe to this, the red logo show. You'll also see a blue logo show pop up. That is the flagship feed, along with interviews, pay-per-view previews. We'll likely have a pay-per-view preview episode later this week for AEW that is likely in the plans, and also some flashbacks and more. So subscribe to both. They're both free. And then search PWTorch to subscribe to our PWTorch Daily Cast and the PWTorch VIP free sample feed. Subscribe to both of those free shows. The Daily Cast, I'm not part of those shows in terms of doing new content, but we've got a great array of hosts doing shows on specific themes, different themes, and different focus each day of the week. Again, it's free, so search PWTorch. We are here to talk Raw right now, immediately after Raw ended. And my co-host, the voice you've heard on the podcast side of things, the face and voice on the YouTube side of things, is Brandon LeClair, a PWTorch contributor. He will be hosting Wrestling Night in America this it's Saturday, right?
Sunday.
Oh, it is Sunday. Okay, I can't keep track. I can't keep track anymore. It's just looking at the calendar, and I don't even know. Actually, now that I think about it, it was on the left and not the right of my calendar screen, so that would indicate Sunday. So this Sunday, I gotta plan my life around that better. I gotta make sure I'm not sitting on Saturday.
An afternoon show too, so that messes everything up.
I knew that part. I knew enough to know that part. And Raw, by the way, just is going to be at 3 Eastern, 12 Pacific next Monday, too. Those are kind of fun. I mean, not convenient for everybody if they want to watch live. And we'll be doing the post show live after, we'll do it right after it airs live on late Monday afternoon, basically. So look for us then. Anyway, we're sitting here. I'm working out my schedule on the air here. So many things, so many curveballs and changes. So anyway, Brandon, welcome. You'll be hosting the AEW pay-per-view post show on Sunday late afternoon or into the evening, probably based on how long those shows go. Yep. Yeah. Well, welcome. Good to have you.
Yeah. Thanks. Glad to be here.
Yep. All right, cool. By the way, our post pay-per-view shows like Wrestling Night America that Brandon hosts most of the time now, Greg Parks too, joins him and sometimes hosts and others. That is on the PWTorch Daily Cast feed. So you need to search PWTorch and subscribe to that feed if you want to hear the show on your podcast app, even though it's a very similar format to our Raw post shows here. All right, so a couple notes. Just you're welcome and invited to join in the chat room. We've already put comments on the screen. If you're watching us live, join in the chat. It's a friendly place, and we've got some good regulars, and you are welcome to join the crew and interact with them. And we'll put some of your comments on the screen and read them for our podcast audience as the show progresses. You can also email us at wadekellerpodcast@gmail.com. If you want to do a longer form question than what we get in the chat, or if you can't watch us live, that's a good way to participate too. You can email us, even if you're just going to listen to the show later and not live, but you watch Raw, Dynamite, or SmackDown. That's a good way to be part of the show. And finally, you can find in my TV report on PWTorchVIP.com if you're a VIP member, or on our Patreon page, a link to be a caller. So if you want to be a video or audio caller, you are invited to do so. Also, I've kind of haven't been pushing this much lately, but I wouldn't mind doing it again. If you attend a show, Raw, Dynamite, or SmackDown, or a pay-per-view, and you want to be our on-site correspondent, I wouldn't mind getting that rolling again. So drop me a line at wadekellerpodcast@gmail.com. And it's kind of fun to talk to people who are in the building and get their take on what goes on in the arena, and get some off-air notes. So I haven't mentioned that a lot lately, and we haven't had many people volunteering for that as a result, but just want to throw that back out there, and I'll probably do that more regularly now. I don't know. I think that's all the plugs we need. So let's get back to our conversation here. Let's talk about the opening and closing segment, that bookended the show, and then a little bit of drama weaved in there with CM Punk trying to unite Jey Uso and LA Knight to survive until the Clash in Paris, and have each other's backs. And so a lot went on there. We'll start with Paul Heyman's ECW-centric promo, talking about statues, a reference to Rocky, and how he is a GOAT because of what he has done on and off camera for the city of Philadelphia and the pro wrestling industry. What'd you think of Paul Heyman, first of all, Brandon?
I thought it was a little odd that he went so heavily with the ECW references and callbacks, knowing the kind of babyface reaction it was sure to garner in Philadelphia. I also thought that he paced the promo well enough and had enough confidence in Jey Uso as a character to assume correctly, for the most part, that they would still side with Jey. So I thought that it worked for what they set out to do. I think against a lesser character, somebody who they weren't as confident in character-wise as Jey Uso, it might have backfired and gotten Paul a significant amount of cheers, or Seth a significant amount of cheers. But I think Jey is so firmly cemented in that role as a top babyface for the company that it worked. I mean, it worked as intended.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. I mean, I'm for the sake of babyfaces, like I said, I always say that heel's job is to make sure they don't undercut the babyface's chance to get cheered and have fan support. When Heyman is Philadelphia, I mean, it is sort of like you just sort of feel like he has to acknowledge it. I don't think he's gonna say, ideally for me, I mean, I'd kind of like Heyman to just turn against Philadelphia if he really wants to go all in as being a heel, and just be like, you people are living in the past. That was great. But that the vision is today. The stuff those letters you're chanting are about yesterday. I mean, try to get legit heel heat, but this is a faction that still has Seth Rollins come out to his theme song where all the fans sing to it. WWE's not super worried about consistency of characters, the integrity of the constitutions of how everyone acts, and dedicated to getting a consistent reaction. They just want moments. They want Heyman to have a Philadelphia ECW moment. They want Seth to have the crowd sing along moment, and that's what they are leaning on. So I'm not surprised, but and I'm okay with Heyman doing that because I just think his character is this wise man, egomaniac, and that's a big part of his history. And I think it works a little better than, say, MJF, doing super babyface stuff in Long Island, which I think, kind of ended up backfiring. I think Heyman's enough of an institution to, get his heat back as the promo goes on and as the night goes on. So we have that. Okay, then we have Seth Rollins. And I wrote this in my TV report that I'm still not sold on this faction. As amazing as Paul Heyman is, and arguably the best manager of all time, certainly his body of work is better than anybody's, in totality. I swing back and forth between Bobby the Brain Heenan and Heyman being the best because their strengths are they're so different. I mean, Bobby Heenan's bump taking and and him, his AWA work especially, I think more than his WWF work, was peak heel manager. But Heyman is I mean, his body of work, you can make an argument he's lapped Heenan several times, so it's more quantity over quality. Or not, it's not quantity over quality, it's quality and quality, but there's a greater quantity with Heyman that might tip the scales with him. So you have all that going for him. So basically, Matt, that's my way of saying I have super high expectations for anything he knew that he's in, if he kind of reinvents himself. And this is better than it started to seem for a little while, where it's like Seth was the guy who's going to do all the talking, and Heyman just stood in the background and then maybe got some words in, which for a few weeks there it felt like was happening. But I just don't have a sense of. I feel like what we're seeing, Brandon, is the behind the scenes Paul Heyman, who really thinks Braun Breaker's a future WrestleMania main eventer, and so he surrounded himself with Seth and Bronson Reed, who's a really beyond a good hand, but like he's the guy who everybody's trying to figure out how to get over and put in a prominent position because he's so respected for his work. But I don't see beyond that something new enough with this Heyman. And I think part of it is it's brought down by Seth being the exact same Seth Rollins, even in this new context. Like Seth just stands there and it's so he's doing the same thing he'd do whether Heyman and Reed and Breaker were there or not. And I don't want Seth to just become something completely different, but everybody's different in different settings. People are different at work versus Thanksgiving with their family versus hanging out with their friends on a Friday night. Situations and circumstances change, and he isn't. He's just this. And I was more a fan of that when he was not part of the faction than I am now. So, Brandon, what do you think about that? And then there's some chat comments and email comments about this too.
I think it's a good point. Seth to me feels like the same character now that he was prior to turning heel. He's just asking for, or he's not even necessarily asking for booze. He's just attacking baby faces, and he gave baby faces an out, so to speak, to not get in his way and the Vision's way. But aside from that, he's not really doing anything different. And there's definitely a lack of cohesion with this group. I mean, you think back to some of these main event level factions over time. Like, you think about the Bloodline, for example, and they all sort of dressed similarly. They looked like a group of guys who belonged together. This feels a little disjointed, and I don't think that they've done a great job at piecing it together in a way that makes me feel like it's not copy paste wrestlers into a group, because this is what makes sense, because Seth is the guy, Braun is the next guy, and Bronson Reed is the guy that they want to get over, but they don't really know how to get him over or what to do with him. And then you have Heyman, of course, who kind of is meant to be the glue that ties it all together, but isn't necessarily doing that, because none of these three guys individually need Heyman to get where they need to be. And Heyman has historically been paired with people who can benefit greatly from his mic work. And not to say that they can't, but Seth doesn't need Paul Heyman. I would argue that when Roman Reigns and Paul Heyman were first paired, Roman needed Paul. Roman was not confident on the microphone. He was getting eaten alive as a babyface. I think Paul helped him find his voice. Brock Lesnar, a fine promo, but not necessarily the style that you look for in as a main event pro wrestler. Heyman comes in and takes care of that for him, does a really good job in that role. Seth doesn't need that. And Braun and Bronson aren't going to be the mouthpieces here. So you're kind of left with Heyman feeling like an amendment to this stable that doesn't necessarily need him.
I think my only disagreement, with you is I would have liked Heyman with Bronson Reed and Braun Breaker
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I think Heyman has something to add to Bronson Reed and Braun Breaker. I think if he's this guy standing up there, he's touting Bronson and Braun. Do you agree with that? It sounded like you were saying Heyman has nothing to add to Breaker.
No. My point was that Heyman, that Bronson and Braun aren't the mouthpieces. They're not the ones talking.
Yeah.
So Seth is the one out there with the voice. And even if you take Heyman away, it's still going to be Seth that's the mouthpiece. And Seth can talk for Bronson and Braun. But yes, if it's Seth that you remove from the equation, I agree completely.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like, Seth just doesn't. I haven't bought Seth and Heyman as having on-screen chemistry. Like, I think Seth's kind of doing his thing, and I don't know the, palace intrigue of how Heyman and Seth get along planning stuff out. But it doesn't seem like there needs to be a lot of collaboration. Seth comes out, he does his thing, and they might have, they can have a few. I mean, they probably plan a lot out, but I'm saying the way the segments play out, they seem like they're just they could come in different doors and outsides of the building and meet in the ring. Like, there's not a lot of, hey, Paul, yes, Seth. There's no fun banter. There just isn't an on-air chemistry with their characters. My inclination is to say that's just Seth being sort of self-centered as a character and perhaps bleeding over into real life a little bit. But I want to know what Seth is getting from Paul Heyman. Seth doesn't really talk about what Paul Heyman adds to the group. He's just so wrapped up in doing the same thing he's always been doing. So, and this, we can talk about this almost any week, but it for whatever reason, it stood out more tonight with Seth with that outfit. And again, Seth on his own as that character, I'm fine with it. But I'd rather have Heyman establish his own group, be the clear forefront of it. And I don't think Seth or Paul Levesque feel like Seth should play in any way in the background to anybody, including Heyman. So yeah, I'd rather have Heyman with Bronson and Braun and maybe a female talent, or maybe somebody called up from NXT to round out the group a little bit and have them have their own identity. I think Seth just overwhelms what could be the identity of this Heyman Braun Bronson faction otherwise.
I also think it would be really neat to see Heyman in a role where he is assisting someone on the come up who is not firmly established in the main event. I mean, he goes from Brock Lesnar to CM Punk to Roman Reigns, now to Seth Rollins. These are guys who are already entrenched in the main event. I mean, I talked about Roman not working as a babyface, but he was there. He was in the main event. Seth is there in the main event. So I think Heyman working with Breaker and with Bronson Reed and trying to get them both to that next level would be a lot of fun.
Yep, I agree. A lot of comments in the chat. I'll get to those in a minute. I'm going to read an email first from Nicholas from Massachusetts. He goes, Wade, count me among those who feel let down by Seth Rollins and Paul Heyman following WrestleMania. Once again, I feel like Paul Levesque failed to deliver on a new compelling story. I thought the story was going to be about how Paul Heyman grew a spine and he and Rollins decided to work together to get revenge on those who did them wrong. That would have been really compelling. What we got instead is a psychopath Paul Heyman rerun and zero character development for Rollins. I thought at least we would get some new entrance music and perhaps dropping the outlandish outfits. Exactly. And I'm still waiting for and by the way, if Seth dropped the outfits and the music, it would be so huge if he turns babyface again to bring it back. I think that's Jericho's calculation with Judas. And it's so associated with this group that lacks chemistry. They took that moment away. Back to the email. And I'm still waiting for the promo where Heyman explains why he finally had enough with Roman and Punk, and Rollins explains exactly why they decided to work together. It seems like wishful thinking that will ever get an explanation now. I have zero interest in this never-ending Rollins-Punk feud. They haven't spent enough time away from each other, and neither guy has changed character-wise. It feels like they've been feuding for 3 years without a break. This is the least interested I've been in WWE in a while. I don't think 2025 has been booked particularly well so far. I know Paul Levesque can do better. It was the takeover era of NXT that brought me back to wrestling after more than a decade away. I want more of that and less of the hot-shotting, lazy main event DQing we've gotten this year. So, big picture comment at the end, and I'm nodding along in agreement. I don't think this has been a good year for Levesque. The bad finishes, the execution of the vision, a lot of stuff, honestly, it's not all bad. I'm enjoying the shows. I just don't think this has been a year where you go, oh, WWE's in good hands with Levesque. I think there's some cracks showing here. And booking is there, this is more big picture, Brandon, but like booking is every good booker has 6, 12, 18 months in them. And then how do you stay fresh? Have you shown the discipline to plan ahead for 18 months down the line when you need to have that next chapter in your booking run? Or were you so wrapped up in doing the current stuff and you didn't plan for the future? We saw that with Nitro over the years too, or in their first stretch of time where they had nothing really ready to go. And then some of your ideas can get stale, and then you do cheap finishes and gimmick matches and title changes and turns. And so, yeah, I mean, we're kind of at that phase with Levesque, where, is he the good booker for 18 months, give or take, or is he a booker who can last a very long time? There's going to be ups and downs, and there's bad fortune, there's injuries, a character gets hot and makes you look better than you are. Sometimes there's a gap in fresh characters and it makes you look worse than you are. But there's real
Dwayne Johnson.
Yes. And then there's just fundamental errors and staleness, and I think there's some of that is contributing to how Nicholas expresses it. That's the least interested he's been in WWE in a while. Levesque, some of this surprised me because that takeover era was one of my favorite eras of the last 30 years in pro wrestling. And I don't know where that guy went, but he's not there anymore. I mean, that aspect of Levesque's booking, so much of what made NXT takeover era work, so much of that is absent right now from the main roster. And it seems like a deliberate move because he thinks that won't work on a big level, but I think there's things that absolutely transfer over. Brandon.
It feels to me almost as though he feels like that format can't work with the length of time they have to fill on a weekly basis, given that he still tries to adhere to that format on PLEs, which I think has come to, it's in some extent to a detriment. I think that was a great form. The 5-match format was great for Black and Gold NXT, but I think that the sweet spot for the WWE PLEs is probably closer to 7 matches with a little less promo in between. Mm-hmm. And they haven't quite hit that mark yet. They're still, it's either the long drawn out longer shows, or it's the shows that feel like they don't quite give you enough with 5 matches. Yeah. But the weekly TV, I mean, they're trying to fill now 4.5 to 4 hours and 45 minutes of live, first run major programming a week versus Black and Gold NXT's 1 hour. And so that's an extra 3 hours plus of TV time. And it does feel like maybe Levesque feels like that strategy, that formula doesn't work on a larger scale, or he thinks that he can't give it the amount of attention that he did because there's just so much to book. But I agree. I think that this year has marked a pretty significant downturn overall in the quality of booking, the long-term booking. We're seeing way too much of the DQ finishes. We're getting an over-reliance in big matches on finisher spamming, which has been a WWE problem for a while, but it seems to just even be, it seems to be continuing and progressing, if you will, in a lot of these major events. So I definitely think that there has been a downturn in the last 6, 7, 8 months or so, especially coming out of WrestleMania season. I mean, we're talking about a downturn in Levesque's booking and didn't even mention John Cena's heel turn, which has just been, or was, now it is in the past, but was a disaster. So yeah, it's been rough.
I will say in Levesque's defense, because I'm not going to completely flip on him. I think he's done amazing work under really tough circumstances for years. I'm working under Vince, taking over, and then not having to look over his shoulder. In Levesque's defense, there's still more good than bad in the totality of the work he's done in recent years. But that doesn't mean you can't be disappointed or see some warning signs. And the finishes are a big part of the just be a brave booker, book finishes, make that a staple of what you do. In his defense, this is not NXT. And I think there's this, not a Bailey voice, we'll get into that, but there's a voice talking to me going, wait, in NXT, Levesque got to do whatever he wanted because everybody who worked for him were thankful that they had a job, wanted to get to the main roster on their best behavior, and he was appreciating them and giving them a platform they had really never had before if they were ROH alum and that type, or if they were from Mexico or Japan. It's like, I want to make this work. And then obviously the developmental people. So he was like a college coach. Now he's a pro coach. He doesn't get paid more than some of these people. Well, he might, but like college coaches have that power over the 18, 19-year-olds that a pro coach has to take a very different approach. That's why in like the NBA, a lot of college coaches just don't work well because they come in and try to treat grown men in their late 20s and 30s like they did 18, 19-year-old kids, and all the veterans just roll their eyes and go, seriously, you're not talking to kids anymore. So with Levesque, not only is that the case that there's all these egos and established main eventers to work with, but he's got John Cena coming in going, this is what I want to talk about this week. I'll talk about the Montreal Screwjob instead of like Cody and the title I just lost. And you got Rock showing up going, yeah, me and Gewurz, we've been talking. This works for us. You make it work. I could go on. Like, there's the outside forces. So you bring up a lot of good points in terms of the quantity of content, especially. I mean, it's not just a 1 hour network show with a 2 hour special every 2 months, 2.5 hour special every 2 months. This is a lot more coming at them, but the egos and the outside forces really can, change, cause him to do things that if he had the type of power Vince McMahon almost always had, might not be happening.
Yep.
Yeah.
And sponsors, I mean, we're hearing that there's a possibility that the rest of the PLEs are on ESPN this year, and that they're saving or they're planning for Lesnar and Cena on that now added show that's going to run opposite of All Out. I mean, if that wasn't on, what if Levesque's plan was to book that in October, and now suddenly, he needs a main event for September 20th because TKO says we're going to run opposite of AEW. So a lot of external factors too that NXT just didn't have.
Absolutely. I mean, NXT was designed to sort of to get Triple H over with a hardcore ardent fans. Mm-hmm. So I think part of the strategy, a cynical view, would be they're trying to put ROH out of business or make them less relevant by, signing a lot of their talent, and the talent went voluntarily and they got paid more and whatever. They earned, WWE earned the right to hire people away in that sense through success. And also it was a way to get Levesque over as a babyface to the hardcore fans and try to turn and that's why he did media Q&As and talked to the wrestling media in a way Vince didn't and all that. He was supposed to be the progressive, forward-thinking guy. And then, of course, that got accelerated with Tony Khan, then became a battle of who can appeal more to the hardcore, ardent internet fans and all that. And it got a little pandering and eye-rolling. And then you had the whole cheerleading fake, the whole rah WWE booster media, I guess, the brand booster media kind of overtaking anything else, and then whatever. That's a whole other topic. Let's throw some chat comments up here about our conversation about the vision. Do you like the faction name, by the way, Brandon?
It's fine.
Yeah. That's how I feel. Seth Rollins, JC Scooby 1976 says Seth Rollins in ridiculous outfits is a yawn fest. Okay, there's a Heenan Heyman debate. I will save that for later and scroll past that, but it's in the chat. People want to look at what was going on there. Sadler Version 3 says it's weird Rollins is the leader of the faction, yet he is the worst fit and odd man out. I will say, because I made a mental note to bring this up, I think part of what we're seeing, and I say this a lot because I really want to be fair in my critiques and criticisms of decisions that are made, because I think sometimes when we see something that isn't going right, Brandon, a lot of us in the sphere of reviewing shows and having, conversations about things afterwards, which is a blast, and I like doing it. A lot of times our criticism, the people who are criticizing would go, duh, we know that's a negative, but we had to make a choice between 4 situations that all had negatives. And when you take into account the politics, where we're going, the limitations we had, the price that we paid for the things that would offset this mistake, we kind of had to do this, but we knew there was something negative baked in. And so I think what we might be seeing here, and this is like if Levesque and Heyman and Seth stepped up, they're like, we know we don't have chemistry, but this is a means to an end. We're not going to be a group in 3 years. Maybe part of the story is Seth's in his own sphere and isn't really bonding with the others. And that's going to be part of the story they eventually tell. And that Heyman is going to be with Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed, and Seth will split off in some form or fashion. Whatever their big story arc is, part of what we're seeing isn't ideal, but it is a means to an end. And yes, I think they'd agree it'd be better if Seth and Heyman had chemistry before some eventual breakup of the group. But if the idea is Heyman's going to manage Breaker, then that can work. It also might be a story arc where Heyman looks like he's on Breaker's side, but eventually bonds with Seth over time, and Heyman and Seth stay heel group, and Breaker turns babyface. I mean, there's all kinds of directions they can go, but I I want to give room to say that they might agree with our criticism of the lack of chemistry, but it really is just a means to an end at this point. It is not a faction that they actually fully, robustly believe in. It's just a stage in a larger story, which Heyman tips his hand on, which is Braun Breaker's Mr. WrestleMania of the future.
And I think we might be getting the clue to that you just brought up. The fact that Heyman is already saying those things about Breaker, and the fact that for quite a while now, I think that there have been signals that they are interested in moving Braun up the card sooner rather than later. And if you are in a stable with a wrestler who is already seated atop the card, you can't coexist there as partners. So someone has to turn. So to me, it does feel like this is less the bloodline and more late stage evolution, where it was a means to an end to get Randy Orton to that next level.
Yep. And so, yeah, again, it doesn't mean our critique and people's critiques and disappointment in this faction, especially with the bar set so high with the bloodline, and frankly, Heyman and Lesnar as the chemistry that they had and what people remember with Heyman and Punk and all that. It doesn't mean that it makes watching them any more enjoyable, but it also might be something that just sort of, I mean, the thing is I still think it would be better for Seth if the goal is for him to go babyface at the end of this, to pull back the outfits and the music. So when he comes back, that's a babyface thing. And I think there's a way to make it work by having Heyman and Seth show more chemistry with each other in the meantime. I mean, I don't think they have to I think the faction can have more cohesion and character depth in chemistry than they're showing, even with whatever the master plan is. But Derek Mitchell says, for those wondering what Seth Rollins was wearing tonight, it was a black pink flower Versace outfit that cost a few $1,000s. So it's not off the Macy's rack, as Nick Barbatti said. Seth often looked like he was just pulling stuff off a Macy's rack. Let's see.
I believe most of he has mentioned this, but I believe that almost everything Seth wears is designer, and he has spent a small fortune on it.
Yep, WWE has a budget for that, and it shows up. And that's one of the things why Mercedes Moné really stands out in AEW, because she really puts the time and money into standing out. Derek also adds, the division just doesn't have any cohesion and collectively with each other, connectivity with each other. It seems forced, like an arranged marriage. That's actually an interesting analogy, an arranged marriage. There is something about this where, maybe it is a case of, again, more means to an end than them thinking that this is great. Eric Moy says Bronson Reed needs the mouthpiece the most. Breaker needs the rub from Seth. Jason D has a comment, but we're going to bring him out of the show in a minute, so I won't read that because I'll let him say it. Four Eyes Malone says, Seth leading this group makes me think if Joker was leading a group with Penguin, Bane, and Clayface, just random and unnecessary. Let's see. Eric Moy says, Heyman is the antagonist that glues the baby faces together. I mean, I think that's good. Oh, I just put up Jason's comment. Let's not do that. Andrew H agrees. Braun and Breaker definitely need Heyman more than Seth does. And Derek Mitchell says, Heyman reminds me of Phil Jackson in the NBA, only doing well with Jordan, Pippen, and Kobe and Shaq. Heyman's best work has been with Brock, Punk, and Roman. I'm just not sold on his work with Rollins. And as far as Triple H's booking goes, Fan Bless says, I think Triple H believes it's his job to simply do a better version of what Vince did and nothing more. There is a little bit of a strategy of do no harm. If you do anything too radically different and things go down, people are going to go, Vince had things figured out, and now you decided to change things, and now look, we're going downhill. So it's a conservative approach to do a number of things similar to Vince rather than doing a clean break. What do you think of that, Brandon, as a theory or framework?
Yeah, but I also think that early we praised Levesque in the first few months of his run atop creative because he assimilated into traffic and made the small changes that were necessary to change the product for the better without it feeling drastically different to the average viewer.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's been the goal all along. So we have proof of concept that Levesque is able to book a strong, competent show within those guidelines.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a good point to make. All right. Well, let's bring Jason from Australia into the conversation here. Jason D, welcome. Thanks for calling up. Thanks for calling earlier in the show than Friday. What's on your mind?
Yeah, thanks, Wade and Brandon. Just quickly, I've been a fan of Paul Levesque's booking, like a pretty strong fan of it. I think the one thing that's really hurt him as far as his pacing is concerned, I think if you asked him, he would admit this. It's been Saturday night's main event. I think having to book those 4 shows in between certain PLEs that you're building towards, I think has been a real negative. And it's just working your way around that and the PLEs and Raw and SmackDown. I think if he had his choice, if he could remove those, it'd be a lot better. I think that's been a real negative for him. And the viewing audience, to be honest with you, I think they just come at inopportune times. And it's sort of like you get taken off where you need to be in regard to building to the big PLEs. Do you think that's a fair comment?
I do. Yeah, I think the oversaturation, and it kind of goes, Jason, what Brandon said, in the takeover era, there was a rhythm and a pace and a chance to catch your breath. And it's not just Center's main event. Now it's trying to work Triple Mania and Worlds Collide hype and introduce this whole other kind of culture of wrestling into the mix. And I get why they're doing it. And in a way, I think it's probably more positive than negative, but it is a challenge
very AEW.
It is very AEW. Yes. And yeah, think AEW's downturn was when they, introduced ROH into the mix that summer in a big way. And Tony Khan's acknowledged to me and others that, that he definitely took note that was a time when people really pushed back, and he augmented the way he frames ROH on his TV show because people did see it as interrupting the flow and all that. So, there's enough differences here where I don't think it'll have the same ramifications, because it does sort of feel like a window into another world that others visit instead of a dead brand that didn't really have a definition of why it existed. This AAA clearly exists because it's the big name brand in Mexico. ROH didn't really have a reason to exist, but we could do a whole section on that. But yeah, good point, Jason.
One of the main reasons why I like Paul Levesque's booking is that, or writing, the writing team, whoever you want to give credit for, is that when there is a heel turn, they give you enough meat to the bone to explain why there's a heel turn, almost to the point that the heel is completely justified in what they're doing, but then, they go about it in the wrong way. So that's one of the big strengths, like the story that they're telling with Bailey, right? And you can get into how they're presenting that as far as the voices and everything, but just they've told a story with her that if she's going to turn heel, it's building up due to frustration. Same with Kevin Owens, same with Drew McIntyre, same with Liv Morgan with what Rhea did to her. That's why I'm a big fan of it. I like the writing behind the characters and their reason for turning heel. Now, but in relation to the vision, I'm higher on the vision, and I think the way that I read into it is that with Seth Rollins, before WrestleMania, he talked to Paul Heyman about why Roman and Punk were using him. I mean, it's like he opened up Paul Heyman's eyes. And Paul Heyman to side with Seth Rollins is not because he has some type of chemistry with Seth, is that he would rather side with somebody who's telling him the truth about things. Even if they got no chemistry, at least he's telling me the truth, and I'm not being guided by my heart and my emotions with Roman and Punk. So I can see why Heyman would want to go with Seth. I could also see why Seth would want to take Heyman away from Punk and Roman, because that's strengths towards his major rivals, Roman and Punk. So Seth is taking this major chess piece off the board and putting it on his side. So he's taking a strength away from Roman and Punk. From Seth's point of view, the other reason you want Heyman is you want Heyman to guide the vision, what Seth has talked about, the future of the business in Braun Breaker. So maybe Seth can't do that, but Heyman can do that for Braun Breaker. So Seth gets to guide, with Heyman's help, Braun Breaker, a guy he sees taking over when he wants him to in Seth's time. And that's where the disruption is going to come, and sort of the anguish and, the conflict. And with Bronson Reed, it makes sense for Seth Rollins to have Bronson Reed on his side, because in recent history, Bronson Reed has caused the most damage to Seth Rollins. So why wouldn't you want this guy on your side? And Bronson Reed actually explained that. So from my point of view, I actually think they've done a good job explaining why this group is together. They don't necessarily have to have the chemistry of the Bloodline or DX or whoever else. They're actually together for an actual purpose. And it's Seth putting the pieces together to help him, even though there's no real chemistry there per se. to me, it makes sense.
I think it makes sense. The question is, can you do something that makes sense, but build upon that and then present segments where it does seem like there's more chemistry, unless they're deliberately trying to avoid that for some reason that'll, manifest later. I just would like to see Seth and Heyman bounce off each other a little more. I mean, to me, it's like if you had a two-person stage show, a stand-up comedian or two magicians, like if Penn and Teller, did their magic shows, but they never interacted with you. There was no bot. They just, one person did a trick and then the next person does a trick. You want to have some sort of dynamic where they play off each other. And I'm just not seeing that. So Jason, can you have what you described, that backstory, and Heyman realizing Seth opened his eyes to what was happening, and not have Heyman be subservient like he was to Roman, and not be the brains of the operation, who's kind of kept this beast in control? What is it with Seth and Heyman that shows up on screen? And is there something more that is there a way for those two to play off each other in a way that matches the backstory that you presented, that then makes the segments more interesting and us buy them as a group? I think there's an upside to be had without a downside, is my point.
I know what you're saying, but you can't force something that's not there. They don't have on-screen chemistry together, right? Obviously, you can't force it. You've either got the chemistry, you've either got that X factor with someone, or you don't. Paul Heyman and Seth Rollins, they don't have it together. But in this case, they don't have to, because the only reason Heyman is with Seth is because Seth sort of convinced him to join his side and to join the vision, and not to be led on by your heartstrings, so to speak, with Punk and Roman. Seth is, in his mind, doing Heyman a favor. At least, listen, we might not have the on-screen chemistry together. Maybe we might not even like each other, but at least I'm prepared to tell you the truth, and you're not going to be used by these other guys who used you. So from a character point of view, I get why Heyman's with Seth. I get why Seth wants Heyman. They don't have to have that chemistry. If it's not there, it's not there. They're about the vision. And when you're about a vision, you sort of let go of the chemistry and all those other things, because you're focused on moving forward. So to me, it makes sense in that way. I don't need to see them bouncing off each other and having all this chemistry. It's not what this group is about.
Would you be happier, Jason, if they had chemistry and could bounce off each other? Is this just, it's reality, they're making the best of it, or are you actually making the case it's actually better off this way, that they don't have chemistry?
Well, I don't know. Listen, ideally, you'd like to have chemistry with a person, but I'm only going by the story that they've told. So, and look, and sometimes I put things together that they don't actually show me. So I make it make sense for myself. Mm-hmm. But to give them credit, going back to when Seth had that great, I thought, promo with Heyman leading into WrestleMania, where he outlined where Roman and Punk were using him. Yep. I can make sense of Heyman aligning himself with with Seth, even if there's no chemistry there. I would rather be with this guy who tells me the truth than somebody who I have chemistry with, who's ultimately going to use me. So maybe it's better to not have chemistry with it. It's like a business relationship. This is business, and it's never going to get personal. And if it's business, you don't have to have chemistry with a person, because it's strictly business.
Brandon, what do you think of this back and forth Jason and I have had?
I agree with the concept. My issue is just that I think that, and Wade, this might be how you're feeling too, is just that I get why these wrestlers are together and why they're working with Paul. That all makes sense to me. And Jason, you do a really good job of laying it out there and going step by step. My issue is, and I agree with the notion too, that because this is business and because of the way that this angle has played out, they don't necessarily need to have great chemistry to be an effective group. My primary complaint is just that because of the lack of chemistry, I just don't think the segments are very good. Yep. That's where I'm coming from here. It's a meta complaint. It's not a complaint from the sense of they didn't explain this group makes no sense. I just don't think that it's coming across well on screen because of the lack of chemistry. That's all.
Yeah, I think we can both, Jason. I think we can all be right. You can say yes. It ultimately it'll work fine, even if it's not entertaining in the meantime, or as entertaining as it could be in the meantime. Jason, let me throw a couple chat comments up from our discussion here. Sadler version 3 says Seth and Heyman feel like teammates who don't talk to each other at all. And I don't like that. You know, I wish there was a little bit more of Seth telling Paul, "Hey, Paul, you know, XYZ just happened, and and Paul going, Seth, you know, this. How do you feel?" Like almost interviewing each other a little bit, or kind of thrown to each other with a better transitions. Mark Paschetti said, "In a movie, chemistry makes or breaks all the main characters. This group won't work. This is its peak." Fanblast says it can make sense as to why they don't have chemistry story-wise, but it needs to be there on a meta level. It just does. Even if it's negative, uncomfortable chemistry, some kind of dynamic that works. And yeah, so that's what I don't want them to give up on it because it's not coming naturally. I think there's something you can work in where it just doesn't feel like it's your turn to talk. Now it's my time to talk. And this wasn't not every promo is going to be that. I mean, Seth was about to talk, and then Jey Uso's music interrupted, and I think that I don't want to say the strength, but well, one positive. We're focusing on Seth and Heyman. What we did see tonight, in particular about tonight's promo, Brandon and Jason, is Seth got Braun Breaker worked up. He started saying things that Jey wasn't saying to get Breaker to sort of gullibly be manipulated into blowing his top, getting heated up. It made Breaker seem a little bit like more of a simpleton than I think they actually ultimately want to portray him. So I don't know that I love what they did tonight, but on the positive side, if we take away the specific, they are trying to establish that Seth is this veteran leader who is coaching, prompting, agitating Breaker in a way that serves the group's purpose. Brandon, I'll ask you first and then get Jason's thoughts. What did you think of that? Do you think it belittled Breaker a little bit because he seemed so gullible, or do you think that's not a good way to frame it? And he's sort of a willing participant to get worked up, and he kind of knew what Seth was doing.
I think it was fitting of the character that Braun is currently playing. I don't think that, and to be clear, I don't think that character is main event level. I think that if you want Braun to be the perennial WrestleMania main eventer that Paul Heyman is talking him up to be, he needs to evolve. So I'm fine with it in the context of where he's at right now, but there needs to be significant evolution from him if they see him at a higher level than this. But for right now, I think it paints the clear delineation that, hey, Seth is in charge here. Seth is the one calling the shots. And if before too long they make the call that, hey, we want to move Breaker away from this and we're ready to pull the trigger on him, they can use this moment as a point where Seth manipulated Braun and Braun becomes privy to it. So I'm fine with it in the context of where he is now. I just hope that they understand that he needs to grow if they want him higher on the card.
Jason.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with Seth in a way manipulating Breaker because, I mean, I don't see this group lasting too long, but they're not going to be like Judgment Day. They're not going to be around for 3 years, right? So this group is eventually going to break up, and we all know that Breaker is one day going to spear Seth, and that's going to lead to the breakup, right? I mean, it's almost Batista Triple H like in Evolution, but they're going to tell the story with it. And then I guess the interesting part is, where does Paul Heyman's loyalties ride? Will it be with Breaker? Will it be with Seth? I think most of us agree that when Seth was away and it was Heyman coming out with Breaker and Reed, now that was some chemistry right there. These look like two badasses coming to the ring. What a great tag team they will make. They're working off well together. I think they've done a great job with Bronson Reed, getting him over as a monster now. There's definitely chemistry there with Heyman, Breaker, and Reed, right? Can we all agree on that? So on that point, yeah, Seth coming in is kind of the odd man out here, but I'm willing to let it play out because I don't think this group is going to last too long. This is a means to an end. Yep,
and that's a caveat that I threw in. But I don't want to give up on their I don't want to give up on the idea that they could still make this more, as Brandon says, more entertaining in the meantime. So anyway, Jason, anything else you want to bring up?
Well, I touched on it before with Bailey, and I think you guys were probably going to lead into this. Like I said, I can understand why she might be turning heel, and all the frustrations she's had and all the setbacks she's had as part of a longer term story. But yeah, like you've touched on, Wade, the overproduction and us hearing her voices this is not something that is consistent with Bailey's character. This is more like a white six type of thing. And this is one of the things that sort of take me out of the moment. It's like we're using cool production techniques to tell a story that we don't really have to. And this is where this one went a little bit too far for me.
Yeah. I mean, and the thing is my criticism, I try to limit my criticism to things that where there isn't a better option that can be easily done. And in this case, I think there's a better option that can be easily done that gives you what you're going for, which is just a different female voice over the loudspeaker, where we can at least tell ourselves that's not Becky talking. It's some other distorted voice. So maybe somebody's messing with her. But then you have to get into the notion of, well, then that's someone on the outside manipulating her. So maybe that doesn't fit the storyline. So maybe that's not better. What's wrong with this is the narrative structure outside of the cinematic COVID era. And granted, I mean, we had the Ultimate Warrior image in the mirror, and we had Papa Shango doing voodoo. But the thing is those things were heavily criticized when they were done. People hated them contemporaneously. The fans of that era hated it. So don't sit here 20, 30 years later and go, well, they did it in the past, so it's okay to do it now. Precedent is not an excuse to continue to do something stupid that fans don't like or that doesn't fit the narrative structure of your show. Have some pride in what you're doing as a craft of pro wrestling. There should be some guidelines. If you have a Bray Wyatt or an Undertaker and you want to say they have their own realm and there's a greater good to it because they're just a really main event star and it's really working and there's a separate set of rules for them, I think most fans of WWE are like, okay, I can deal with that. But to have Bayley suddenly in a segment where she's hearing her own voice and we can hear it, are we supposed to think that's a voice in her head that we're privy to hear? Or are we supposed to think she's pre-recording mind-effing messages to play later as some split personality while she's sitting down introspectively trying to cope with what's going on in her head? There's no explanation that fits the narrative structure of WWE to make it work. And WWE's sloppy about this in little ways. It's like, why are we filming this person on their phone backstage? Oh, because 3 seconds later, somebody walked into the screen and now they're having an interesting segment. They don't put much thought into trying to make things have a presupposition that makes sense. But this is egregious, and it is saying we want the creative license to tell this story. Our normal guardrails of how we tell stories be damned. And I think it's jarring, and it's amateur hour, and it's not worth it, really, no matter where they're going. And we'll talk about the content of it aside from the creative framework of it, because I think, do you need a hug at the end is a hint of maybe something to come. But Brandon, what do you think? Are you with me on this?
I am. Yeah. I mean, I thought Bayley did a fine job with it for what she was asked to do.
Yep.
Like she did it well. She portrayed the character well. I don't think it's a good idea. I think that it is delving into a territory that I largely wish that they would avoid. I have never been a big fan of this type of narrative presentation. I didn't like it during the pandemic, and I gave it a pass because of the circumstances. I thought a lot of that stuff was as good as it could be given the circumstances. But out of that era at this point, I just don't have any interest in this type of storytelling and this type of departure from the vast majority of reality that they try to present.
And some people in the chat are like explaining that Bayley is hearing voices in her head. Derek Mitchell says Bayley hears voices in her head that counsel her and understand they talk to her. Sadler Version 3 says, I wouldn't mind over the top voices in the Bayley promo if they told the story earlier that she was going crazy by becoming an unsuccessful loser. This kind of feels out of the blue, but I'm intrigued. So I think, Sadler, you and Derek are well, in Goodfellow at 1420 it was more of a split personality character. I get all that.
To be clear, Wade, Derek was just reciting Randy Orton's theme song.
No way. Did I just let me go look. Here and there that counsel her and understand. Oh yeah, okay. Well, okay. It was grouped with the other two. Thank you, Brandon. Next time text me so I can correct myself so I don't get called out. No, I'm kidding. So Mark Biscotti.
I was wondering if you're going to pick up on that.
No, I didn't. Without the singing. So we're supposed to get Mark Biscotti says, so we're supposed to get behind a character going through early schizophrenia. Derek, I'm not going to keep reading your lyrics. So here, seriously, I get the character. You're explaining the character. The issue is, which the chat is not bringing up, is how are we hearing voices in her head? I get that I get there's voice. I get the gimmick. There's voices in her head. She's got, person on the left, person on the right, on her shoulder talking to her. But it's stupid with two O's in the middle that we can hear it. There's no explanation for that.
And Wade, you bring up, is there a better way to tell this story? There is. Just have her tell you. Just have Bayley say, there is a voice in this ear telling me this, and there is a voice in that ear telling me that. It might not be as showy and
exactly.
production heavy, but it will make a lot more narrative sense.
A pointer to Bob Newhart, late great comedian and star of two sitcoms. His gimmick in his stand-up routines and on his show was he'd have phone conversations. You could only hear him talk, but he had a way to tell the audience what the person on the other line was saying to him. So he'd be like, "Oh, you think I need to treat my patients differently in my practice? Oh, that's interesting. What's different? Oh, okay. So you think I need to do this?" Like, we could have that moment with Bayley where she's like, like looking around, like, she's hearing things that we can't hear. That'd make it so much more immersively believable. And she can, like you're saying, Brendan, restate what the voices are telling her, or the context of her response would reveal it. And that's that keeps you in the narrative structure of the show. And like, there's no other show that does, like, there's no other genre, not Broadway plays, not television shows, scripted shows, reality TV shows don't suddenly break. I mean, it's just there's no other genre that does it, because it's amateur hour, it's undisciplined, and it's just like, well, we want to get somewhere and we're just going to tell the story our way. But it is overproduced nonsense, and it is a manifestation of actually going through creating wrestling shows, not understanding fundamentally the structure that's necessary for this sort of absurd fake sport, the simulation of something to work. Is you need to work really hard to pull people into a world where there are certain structural rules. That's why the invisible camera, when I interviewed Tony Khan on the eve of the first Dynamite ever, he's like, we're never going to have an invisible camera backstage. We're never going to have a wrestler talking in a way where they're oblivious to the camera, but we can see them and we can hear them, but they are talking as if there's not a camera there. He understood that was immersion breaking. He had one segment where I can't remember who was in the car, but there was like a camera in the car, and the TV show showed the dash cam, and it was like, how did that happen? He never did it again. I actually texted him about it right after. I'm like, wait a second, you see, we're going to do this nonsense. So you want to have an explanation for what's going on. There's no explanation for Bayley's own voice interacting with her in real time on these. It's overproduced dribble, and
it's why the Undertaker is an exception to a rule. I mean, look at the Wyatt Six. Like, they're not a prominently featured act for a reason. Yep. It just doesn't fit in the narrative structure.
Exactly. All right, Jason, back to you.
Yeah, I was going to say, all the things that we heard that were meant to be the voices inside of Bayley's head, it even would have helped if we've heard those things before. So at least they're replaying stuff that we've heard this other personality say to her. I mean, you could have had a sit-down interview with Kathy Kelly, right? And Bayley's just talking normally. Then all of a sudden, she sort of looks to her side and answers a question that nobody asked, as if to say, like, well, do I need a hug? And Kathy could be like, well, sorry, I didn't ask you that question.
Yeah,
you know
exactly.
What I mean?
Yep.
That could have played that up. We could have seen this breakdown, this sort of split personality happen in real time without all the production technique. It actually would be more effective and, a little bit more intriguing,
Everything in a pro wrestling show, at least the way WWE does it and the way any successful company in history has done it, should go through the filter of, can the audience believe that a documentary crew or a sports TV crew showed up and was told, film what's happening? And everything we see as a result of somebody who's not part of production meetings, not part of the script writing, has never done it before, could point a camera at the ring, point a camera at a wrestler backstage, film things happening backstage, and it would translate to a TV show. That everything should go through the filter of, yes, could this just be filmed happening naturally? And when you introduce this type of thing, also, we see it on like when NXT especially, but others have done it, where like wrestlers will sit in a restaurant and talk to each other, and you can tell they filmed it 3 different times and they spliced it together afterwards like a sitcom. But they do angles unlike sitcoms, where the angle you're seeing now of a wrestler would reveal the camera in the background based on the next angle we see, but they don't do it because they film everybody talking separately and splice it together later. And that's just utter, complete nonsense. And it shows a complete lack of sophistication and understanding of the type of detail work that goes into how movies and sitcoms are filmed. But they want to overproduce stuff in a way that ends up undercutting the believability of the product.
I tend to run. Go ahead, Jason. Sorry.
No, you go, Brandon.
I was just going to say, I tend to run a lot of these things like through the lens of watching these shows whenever I'm on these post shows. Typically, my fiance is around in the room, so she is seeing the shows. She's not a fan; she doesn't watch normally, but she is generally aware of what's happening just from being around me. And over the years, she has become accustomed to the quote unquote rules of pro wrestling. So she gets it. She gets what is happening. And when there's something that's really out of left field, she'll usually have a comment. And I knew that this wasn't working in particular tonight, because she looked up from her book and she looked at me and she was like, "That was stupid." And then just went back to her book.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's such a great example. And people go, well, it's not meant for her. She's not a wrestling fan. But the thing is you don't want stuff to jump off the screen as so out of the narrative structure of the show that somebody only not even half paying attention is going to go, wait, what is going on here? This doesn't work. And yeah. All right. Anything else, Jason?
Yeah, look, WWE, they fall into the trap sometimes of just overproducing things just so they can sort of pat themselves on the back and say, look what we can do. But then it ends up damaging the story. That it takes you out of the moment. Like, I have no issue with them using all these production techniques in promo packages leading up to matches, because I think we all agree WWE is the best in the world in that. Like, they can make, sort of like this really dull feud leading into seem like the most dramatic thing in the world. They're so good at their video editing and what they do and the highlights. It's so good. But sometimes just because you can do it doesn't mean you have to do it in every circumstance. So this is the one where if Bayley just was having a sit-down interview and just started answering questions that Kathy Kelly wasn't asking, or looking to her side as if someone's talking to her, or making things up and Kathy Kelly selling it like there's something not right with this person, it would have been far more effective. I guess the only other point I wanted to raise,
Jason, real quick, to back up your point, I want to throw in the Cody Roman Georgia Tech thing as the other thing was just way overproduced, way overdone. There two people standing in an empty football field, but then we get close-up shots of both of them. How are we getting those close-up shots if this is being filmed in real time and not spliced together with several takes? You have to believe that there's some zoom camera perfectly positioned from super far away. And I mean, the technology exists to maybe pull that off, but it was jarring. You're like, wait a second, they're standing there and there's no cameraman there. It wouldn't have hurt at all to have 2 people kneeling and filming them and have it be done in one take live. It would have felt much more real. And instead I always compared it to Oasis's Be Here Now album, their 3rd album. It was just their CD. It was just so criticized for being so over the top and so overproduced. And the fans and music critics were disappointed because they just got full of themselves. It was this overwrought, overproduced, opulent, needlessly opulent production fireworks show, and an organic version of it would have been so much more effective. And so, yeah, Bayley sitting there telling us what she's hearing in so many words would have been so much better. All right, go ahead, Jason.
Just one quick point. I don't know if this is a major one. It's just something I've noticed. With Rhea Ripley, I don't know. Does she come across sometimes a little bit too apologetic? I'm not. These segments she's having with Io Sky, like, these women go out there, they beat the crap out of each other, but then they're afraid to offend the other person. It's just like she's always like, "Oh, I'm sorry, Io. Look, I'm trying to help." It's like, I don't know. To me, it's like it sort of takes away her badass nature. I'm not really sure how to explain it, but there's just something a little bit off with these segments. Like, what's your opinion?
Well, this isn't super on point with what you're bringing up, but I'll say it. I'm just tired of all these women screeching and yelling hysterically at each other. I think they're being, the men are produced this way too. So it's not like it's just like sexist, like the way that they're having these women portray each other. But nobody comes out of these segments looking good. Not Rhea. She spent a whole year being framed and asked to do things that are unbecoming. And she's super resilient. She's super popular, but that does not mean she wouldn't be better off if they weren't having her be in compromising situations where she just ends up being unlikable or seems I don't know, all kinds of adjectives come to mind in terms of the different positions they put her in. And the segments with Io Sky and Asuka, I mean, I get the point they're making and where they're going with it. I just think there's a way to do it. And I'll throw in Adam Pearce. Like, his character was so good when it was understated, when it was, oh, you just read his facial expressions and you can almost see the sweat of stress. And he kept it bundled up. But this yelling over the top, just crazed temper tantrum guy, it's such an inferior version of everything he had done before that. And I do not like whoever's producing him now telling him, we need you to just yell and scream like some stereotypical over the top boss. Like, his character was better when it wasn't. So it's sort of like the Jimmy Hart school, like WCW Saturday Night back in the day. Like, he produced interviews and he was like, turn it up several notches. And it was like, everything just became cartoonish and not believable. And so I think there's something going on with the way some of these segments are being produced that it's hurting Adam Pearce's character. It's hurting a lot of the women. And I agree. It's hurting Rhea Ripley. I think people want her to be a strong character. WWE Unreal showed us perhaps more than we ought to have seen at this stage of her career. You can do that later. How insecure and nervous she really is. And I don't think that's going to help, but I don't want that to leak through either. I think her character is this really good person who has confidence and a determination and will stand up for friends and not be meek or overly apologetic. Brandon, what do you think?
My read on the portrayal of Rhea has been, I think it to me, it has seemed like a group of writers who are out of touch with modern feminism and with femininity. It feels to me like they feel as though if Ripley is not deferential and apologetic, that she loses some of her appeal as a woman. I think it is an inherently awful take, but I think that that's what we're seeing.
Jason.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't mind seeing a more, I don't know, it's a tough one. I get them maybe trying to add a different layer to her character, that they don't want to just be this dominant mummy who just dominates and all the rest of it. But her interactions with Io, it just always looks like she's sort of slouching and apologetic and even mopey to an extent. Like, you're not, like, you're to a point, like, you're Rhea Ripley. You're Rhea bloody Ripley. You go in there, you dominate. You're not that in the ring, but it's like when they get backstage, everyone's afraid to offend one another. I don't know, but you're right, Wade. It even comes across that with the men sometimes. It just comes across a bit off to me. So whatever they're doing here, I think that they're going to have Asuka turn heel, or Asuka's going to feud with Rhea. I guess things from their point of view, Bianca's injury came at a bad time, because I'm positive coming out of WrestleMania we would have gone into Bianca versus Rhea. And I'm more than certain it would have led to a Bianca heel turn based on the fans being okay with reinserting herself in the match. And that would have led to resentment for Bianca. And then we would have had something really good with Bianca and Rhea, these two badass women just going at each other and having a real personal feud. So maybe they've been sidetracked with this. But yeah, I would like Rhea to stop being... I get what they're trying to do, at a different layer, what Brandon's saying. But yeah, a little bit too apologetic for me. And just she's got to be a bit more that badass, even backstage.
Yeah,
and don't apologize for it either.
Yep, I agree. All right, cool. Thanks, Jason.
All right, that's it. Thanks, guys.
Great stuff. Yep.
See ya.
Yep. All right, let's go to Darrell next. Last time we had Darrell on, I had to rush him off because we were up against our 2-hour window coming to an end. So we'll go to Darrell now, give him a little more time. We also have Danny on hold up next. Darrell, welcome. Good to hear from you.
What's going on, Wade? What's going on, Brandon? Yes, sir. So y'all talked about a lot of different things. I want to talk about the women's title and where should they go.
Yeah.
I don't want to see the old like with Rhea and Io Sky get back in the title picture because it seemed like they having a story with them. They're trying to do some type of modern age women super mega powers link up to keep their feud from tapping off because I think they probably want to let them have a match potentially later on down the line. So I want to see how do they because I know this coming up last minute. They didn't expect Naomi to be pregnant or something like that. But I want to see they allow Stephanie Bakir to be in that match and they find somebody else and then they build off for whoever win that match and build stories for that person. What do you guys think about that? And do you want to see them go back to the old either Rhea or EO get the title, or would you like to see somebody new, maybe Stephanie Bakura?
I don't want them to, pick that fruit too quickly. Like I want it to, ripen. I think there's more work. Work's maybe the wrong word. Just more time to be spent with Vakir before we move her into just kind of force her into a spot because ultimately that's where she's going to end up and that's where you think she belongs. So my initial inclination is to say, why rush it? Even if it means having to endure something that feels a little bit like a rerun. Brandon, what do you think?
Yeah, I felt like there wasn't. I didn't think that there was a strong chance that Vakir would leave Clash with the title, and I didn't necessarily think that that was a bad thing. I'm a huge proponent of her, and I think that she is a future main event star for that division for sure. But I think that there probably is going to be some. There's going to be some strong storytelling in the climb for her. And I would hate to see her first title win come off the back of a sort of a shoehorn situation that they were forced into because they lost Naomi last minute. Yep. So I think that I get what you're saying, Darrell, and I agree that Io and Rhea one-on-one feuding for the title into the fall isn't necessarily the best idea from a freshness perspective, a storytelling perspective. But I do think there needs to be a way to get one of them, because only one they're the only two people that have a reasonable claim to be opposite of Stephanie at Clash. Otherwise, you're going to be in a situation where you're putting somebody who clearly hasn't earned a title shot in against Vakir, who has this title shot that has been guaranteed to her for however many weeks now it's been. And so I think it's got to be either Io or Rhea, and one of them probably wins the title. Maybe you don't go right back to Io and Rhea after that, and you go in another direction. But I think that Stephanie needs to marinate a little bit more. We need to see a little bit more of her journey toward the top before they pull the trigger there. I just don't want to see her first title run be marred because it was something they were forced into because of the Naomi situation.
I will say, I don't think it would be a disaster if they did it, Brandon. I think there's a way to make it work. Like, I don't want to say like, well, because sometimes you do have to call an audible and you do have to go with something sooner than you wanted. So I'm not trying to contradict my own comment. I think spending more time with her before making her the centerpiece to me feels right. But there are times where shooting someone to the top and you have injuries, it opens up. Like, in some ways, some wrestlers have to sort of wait their turn, even though it's clearly like, you extend the sports analogy. A higher paid player might not be playing as well, but he has to get the minutes in because they committed to the contract, even though there's a bench player who's clearly going to help a team win more. So, is that circumstance here with Liv and Bianca and Naomi and like just they're having to go to their bench? Well, maybe it actually is an opening to push somebody harder than you would otherwise when you'd make her wait in line. You don't want her to just sort of blend in. You can tell a story. She's something really special. So I think that's what Darrell's getting at, is this is actually an excuse to do something you normally wouldn't do that might inject some freshness into it. I still side on, I think if she gets a title right away and she becomes a centerpiece, it feels a little too quick and perhaps has a risk built in. But I'm not totally down on the notion of just deciding to go with her. Go ahead, Brandon. Yeah.
I mean, JC Scooby in the chat too saying not seeing Steph on TV for weeks isn't helping either. I think that's a good point. If Stephanie Vaquer were being featured on TV weekly and building up some wins and credibility here, then I probably could buy into much more easily the idea of just saying, hey, let's strap a rocket to her and go with it. But now we're looking at next week being the final Raw before Clash in Paris when she's set to get her title match. And we haven't seen her for close to a month other than just backstage.
Yeah. Nope. Yep. And I'll hold on a sec, Darrell. Goodfella 1420 says, Stephanie is ready, but I'm not sure her character is. I wouldn't be mad if she won either. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of playing to what we're saying. And JC Scooby said, not seeing Stephanie on TV for weeks now. And I thought there was something else I was going to bring up. Oh, just JC Scooby said, bring Mariah May up if you want to fortify the depth chart. Okay, go ahead, Darrell.
And I would say this, and I contradict you guys' thing for a second. I say you should be able to bring her up and maybe give her the title because you have two strong characters in, let's say, Io and Rhea right now that has an atmosphere that's sucking everybody in and it's hard to get anybody over. And I think that's what you had the effect with when Becky was trying to help get Lyra over, and Lyra's personality couldn't topple Becky's or Bailey's. So it was harder for her. Stephanie got a character that fans are attracted to right now. I'm just saying, give her the title and then use her character to continue to build the title and whoever you want to put against her. You're not telling you're slipping up right now because you had to do this in a week, but you're not looking for, hey, just this past week. You're looking for the next 6 months. And hopefully you're telling a story with her that you can build up to maybe a bigger match between one of those other two, the EOs or the Rheas. And you can pay that off in another different way because you telling the story of her journey being unexpectedly getting the title or something different, because that's something that they don't do and they stick to the same type of things. So that's why I was saying that as well, because sometimes what they used to say, the title shouldn't make the person. You should make the title more. The person should make the title. And giving you a sports analogy too, Wade, Kyrie Irving with the Celtics, he was supposed to be the big guy, and they got Jason Tatum. Then Kyrie got hurt. Jason Tatum had to step up and be the man, and he took those guys to the Eastern Conference Finals. And they were like, well, we can go ahead and let Kyrie go.
Yeah.
And boom, that's what you're doing.
Yes. And then it helped Dallas beat the Wolves. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm not changing my position that I wish, and this gets to the comment of, I just wish she was more of a presence on TV. So it's felt like, yes, we're pushing her fast and hard, and the story is it was unexpected, but she had a chance to forge a connection with the audience more substantially before that. Brandon.
Wade, given the fact that they haven't mentioned the match at all since introducing the Naomi situation last week, do you think that they just might kick the can down the road a little bit?
Yeah,
so,
I'm not assuming that's the case, but it's certainly a possibility.
Yeah. So in that aspect, I think I can get a little bit more on board more quickly. And what I think I would do is run some sort of tournament that starts next week on Raw to establish the opposite number one contender to whoever is going to face Stephanie at whatever show they decide.
Mm-hmm. And Michael Cole did mention that. He did say that Stephanie is the number one contender.
Yeah.
And next Monday, we're going to start to find out who will be facing her. So that's what he said.
Did they say specifically at the Clash? Or was it implied at least?
He kind of implied it, but he said we'll see something on Monday.
Yeah. I assume they've had all week to figure this out. I mean, they knew last week what was going on with Naomi. So, they've had time. It wasn't like something thrown at them tonight where my point is, I think we can read into what they said tonight on TV as part of a plan that's already been formulated. I hope they've come up with what they're going to do. What else, Drew?
Okay. Another thing is this. I had brought this up in the chat, and listening to you, Jason, and Brandon talk about the Visions group and how I feel all three of those guys are guys who don't have a character. are struggling with the character, defining the character. And I want to focus on a specific person. I want to see how y'all take it. I know they saying he's supposed to main event a lot of WrestleManias for a long time. I've been watching Braun since when he came in on NXT 2.0, and they let him run through and get the title immediately and run through Ciampa, who was the heart and soul at the time of NXT. Um, I want to hear what y'all think about this. I have Dom Mysterio as a better long-term character
I saw
in
you
person.
mention this in the chat. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. Over Braun, and it's because how flexible his character has been. I remember when Wade when he first came out, and Wade was like, "I don't think this babyface being the son of Rey Mysterio working for him and stuff like that." And then he morphed into something else once he got with um, Judgment Day, and they kind of going back and they're taking it and turning it where you don't see them kind of splitting up, and they still pushing Dom as he kind of slowly taking charge and being the leader of the Judgment Day, and his character is constantly evolving, and every time when you evolve, you grow. And the problem with the Vision, and let's say with Braun Breaker, he hasn't evolved or grew. He's just a guy with a great spear, the speed. You're talking about stuff that he does and not the character himself. And somebody who sounds similar to Scott from time to time, and he might use Steiner mouth. So am I outrageous for saying that Dom could potentially maybe be a bigger star than Braun, even though we know that they're gonna push and do everything they can to make sure that Braun is that guy?
I won't go as far to say he'll be a bigger star than Braun, but I think he will be has a chance to be in the same realm, but a very different character, kind of a Roddy Piper, Hulk Hogan dynamic. Not saying Braun is Hulk and Dom is like, I'm not prescribing like that Dom is the next Roddy Piper, but like where two people can just be so different that you don't really need to compare them. They're just both main eventers. There's a chance that Dom has a longer run of being, because I don't think they're that different in age. So has a longer run of being a relevant, once he gets to main events, a longer run where Braun Breaker might burn a little harder. Brandon, what do you think?
Man, I was kind of like sitting here working through it as you were laying out the scenario, Darrell, and I think if you asked me today, right now, if
they're 6 months apart in age, by the way, just to underline that, yeah.
If you proposed a hypothetical scenario where both of these guys remain who they are today, so they don't progress, they don't grow as characters, they don't grow as wrestlers, they are who they are right now, and I've got to keep one, toss one away, and the one that I keep is going to be a main eventer for WWE for the next several years, I'm taking Dominic Mysterio.
Wow. Yeah.
But I do think that Braun Breaker has more potential overall.
Well, wait, explain that. Why do you want someone with less potential?
So I'm saying that they're frozen in time. I'm getting this guy. I'm getting who he is, and he's already hit his ceiling. That's the premise for my argument here. Yeah. So if Dom and Braun have both hit their ceilings, I'm taking Dom.
Gotcha.
But if they are, as people do, able to grow, I'm still going to go with Braun. And I think that's the calculation that WWE is making. But I agree with you, Wade, in the sense that I think they can both be potentially big stars in different ways. I think that Dom is a very different wrestler, a very different character, but I think he has a more organic connection with the audience right now. I think he is a better promo. I think he's a better overall wrestler. I think he is better than Braun at most things right now, except maybe the look. I mean, you give Braun the edge in the look, but that's really it.
You imagine the poster on a big Las Vegas light up billboard in WrestleMania. You imagine Braun Breaker, just being perfect for that, and Dom not being perfect for that. The old Daniel Bryan, you can't be the face of the brand type thing. I get that, and there is something about Breaker. I mean, it's a nice choice. I mean, it's a nice choice to have. It's like, I mean, this is it, we're not dissing on either of them. It's an interesting debate to have. I was going to say it's a big compliment to Dom that we're talking about this, but really it's a huge compliment to Braun too, that we're not just sitting here saying, well, come on, they're both going to flame out or one of them's not going to work out. Like, we both think both have legit main event potential and can be valuable for a long time. And I think we've seen enough from both where that's a better bet. But Braun is being pushed at a higher level than Dom, and Dom is, Dom isn't Grayson Waller, but he's not Grayson Waller, like in terms of, certain aspects of how he's portrayed. So, in a way, we're jumping the gun because we're recognizing, as you say, Brandon, a bond with the audience and a versatility and a range that Breakker hasn't shown yet. But there is a pedigree and an intensity and a star demeanor that Breakker shows that doesn't come around all that often, that obviously Paul Heyman recognizes. I interviewed Paul Heyman back in the 90s, and yes, he was in the Dangerous Alliance at the time, so he was self-promoting. He was like, Steve Austin's the future of this business. And this was before Eric Bischoff fired him. This is before, he became stone cold and shaved his head. Heyman told me in a Torch Talk in the Pro Wrestling Torch newsletter, Steve Austin's the future of the industry. He could have said that about other people. He chose Steve to say it for. He has a really good history of picking people out. And enhancing what they can do. And Breakker is someone who caught his eye, and he's a Heyman guy. So, all right, Darrell, anything else before we move on?
Last thing I would just say about that is this: Braun remind me more of a Goldberg, but better. But why he remind me so much of Goldberg is it's the look, the moves, and stuff like that. That doesn't translate over years because as we get older, we all know body breaks down, stuff like that. And he hasn't developed the character. What makes him different than somebody a la Roman Reigns? Roman Reigns was eventually able, once he was able to take control, was able to add that character, which caused the boom, the bloodline, and all of that. We haven't seen that from Braun yet, and he still have time. But we are seeing that from Dominic, from all the character changes just in the Judgment Day himself. That can carry him over for years and years and years, just that alone. And he's not bad in the ring, and a lot of people like wrestling him because of how decent he is in the ring and what he does and how his character adds to them, and they can play off of to continue to get themselves over. So that was just one thing that I was throwing out there, because till we get that evolution, pun on the word, but evolution from Braun and the Vision included, Braun, he fits with Seth Rollins because they both are just two guys who need characters, the definition of characters, and something else. I think Braun could probably be the next Seth Rollins. And then we saying, like, do he really fit when you get the next Roman Reigns or whoever pop up and then take over the scene with their character and how they mesmerize the crew? So that's another way to define their character. They're so much alike.
Well put. Darrell, thanks.
You got it.
Good topics. Yeah, great conversation. Thanks. A couple chat comments about the point that Darrell brings up in our conversation. Sadler Version 3 says, Braun has higher potential than Dom, in my opinion. Goodfellow wants to know, could Braun versus Dom main event a WrestleMania? Brandon, I don't rule that out. A heel or babyface role for either of them. I think you could.
It's hard to imagine right now in the current incarnation, but I mean, you never know. I mean, we probably would have been saying the same thing during very early Roman Reigns, and I don't know who would be an equal contemporary at the time. I mean, like a Daniel Bryan.
Yeah, that's okay, man. Yeah. So do you think the majority of Dom's years will be spent as an Eddie Guerrero type babyface, and will Breakker be someone who switches back and forth a lot, or is he going to be more of a babyface Goldberg? Is he going to be more of a, I don't know, like, because I haven't figured out if I think Breakker's better as a lead centerpiece babyface act or a perennial kind of managed by Paul Heyman heel act with his persona, ring style, and all that. I think there's room for both, but I don't think it's obvious. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm not sure either. I mean, we really haven't seen him do the babyface act all that much, or really at all.
Part of it, yeah.
I think that with Braun, that there's a high potential for burnout with Braun, and I say that from the crowd perspective, and I don't necessarily know that he will get burned out, but Goldberg, I think the comparison to Goldberg is apt, and not just because of the spear. Goldberg was a simple character. There wasn't much to him.
And very tightly wound.
Yeah, and it's not a knock on Bill Goldberg the person or his intelligence or anything. It's just there wasn't much to Bill Goldberg, the wrestling character, in the same way that there isn't much to the Braun Breaker character right now. And I don't know if you want to continue to present him the way that you are, that there's going to be a ton of opportunity to add those multiple layers of depth. And without those multiple layers of depth, are you a wrestler who can connect on a major stage in 2025 for a significant length of time? It's not 1998 anymore.
Yep.
I don't know that a Goldberg character lasts for the 10 to 15 years that WWE now expects to get out of their centerpiece baby faces.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I mean, Breakker is a better version of Goldberg already in actually several ways, but Goldberg was not. I mean, I felt not on an island, but I got pushback when I was like, Goldberg's a one-note character, and you know, he doesn't cut promos. He can't give and take in the ring. If he has long matches, it sort of unravels what got him over in the first place. It's not a particularly sustainable gimmick. It burns hot, but it burns out. And they're wanting to take a different direction and pace with Breakker, but I think Breakker brings more to the table too. I mean, Goldberg was a very good athlete, NFL level athlete, but Breakker is athletically at a level higher in terms of the versatility of what he has shown he can already do in the ring. But I don't know. And obviously with Roman Reigns, that hasn't been, well, it was an issue as the lead babyface. His moveset was kind of limited and cartoonish. So, you know, it should be a concern.
And the character was paper thin. He was very one note. What did the big dog stand for? Who was he? We don't know. Yeah. We still don't know.
And he didn't know, and that was the thing. Like, I think Braun Breaker knows who he is better than Roman Reigns, a babyface act did.
Sure.
So he has that going for him. As a babyface, though, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it's if Paul Levesque's still booking and Paul Heyman's still around, I mean, we'll get to see it play out if Braun stays healthy. Derek Mitchell points out, I think Braun is in a similar role to Lex Luger in 1987 when he joined the Four Horsemen, that had been named the total package by Ric Flair, but needed time to develop. And yeah, he's certainly being developed in a way where he's being protected and featured. Derek says, Dom has been allowed to develop his character without being asked to help carry the main event mantle. That can be good. It can also define you down a little bit, but I think it's, you know, there's a natural flow to both that I think is proper for where they both came. I don't think you want Breakker, you know, doing comedy bits in a mid-card faction for 2-3 years before you decide to push him. That doesn't work for his type of character any more than it would with Goldberg. Sadler version 3 says, I don't picture Dom as a face of the company like I do Braun. I hope I'm wrong, though. JC Scooby says, Dominic would be better as a leader of the Vision than Seth. Ouch. Jason D from Australia says, when Dom loses, it doesn't hurt him. When Breakker loses, you have to be meticulous and picky with his losses, much like Gunther. True, although I think you can have Dom... I keep saying Grayson Waller, but you don't want Dom to come across as just a joke punchline who just loses in all the big moments and big matches either, to the point where you can't recover from it.
And he did for a while.
Yeah. Although I think the idea that we're watching him grow up in front of our very eyes is part of the journey we're on with him. And journeys are huge, and fans, I think, attach themselves to wrestlers who they go on the journey with him in real time. But, you know, Dom's 28. You know, I mean, he's not 24. You know, I mean, it's kind of, like it's not that long before you got to think about where's the adult, fully fleshed out, fully developed version of Dom going to be? What kind of role is he going to have? You don't want him to be 33 and still in the role he's in now, but I do think they're on a course with him that shows real promise. Darrell says, if Braun takes too many losses, he loses his mystique. Exactly. And Derek says, you don't want Braun to end up like Ryback. There's another comparison. I'll take Braun at this stage over Ryback in many, many respects. Sadler adds, I think Braun has more mic potential than you guys do, but we'll see. Well, I'm not ruling anything out. I just don't think we've seen enough to be confident of anything.
And the promo work that he's done hasn't been bad. It just hasn't fleshed out his character in any way. It hasn't added depth. And he's a legitimately smart guy. They were telling that story early on. Like, this isn't some dumb jock who can't string words together. And we've had them in wrestling, but they had other traits. But that's why him being triggered by Seth, who's clearly manipulating him with exaggerations, I don't know if that's great for the base of Braun's character, that he's just kind of the dumb guy who the smart guy in the group gets to do
crazy things. I don't know that you want to have that be how people start seeing him. That said, and again, that seems it's more about Seth being a manipulator, and it's more about Seth than it is Braun. But it's hard to have Braun suddenly grow a spine and be an alpha if he's that as easily manipulated as he has been in recent weeks, especially tonight with Seth. All right, let's bring Danny Tachito into the conversation. Danny, welcome.
How's it going?
Good. Pronounce your last name. Do I get it right?
You get it right and wrong at the same time, actually. I've been keeping it as like an inside joke for myself that you pronounce it the Italian way, but the actual way that we pronounce it here is Tachito. But I actually like hearing Tachito like every time. It's like
gotcha. Okay.
Takes you back to the old country. So keep doing Tachito.
Sounds good. All right.
All right. So I'm going to be very quick. Obviously, Darrell and I flipped this time. Apparently.
Yep.
Yeah. Number one, I could talk about this whole Braun thing for hours. What I will say is that I trust Paul Heyman more than anybody at picking who main eventers are and attaching himself to them. Like you were talking earlier about Steve Austin back in the day. He attaches himself to Brock. He attaches himself to Punk. The only miss was Cesaro, which apparently that was thrusted upon him. Like he is an incredible, and going back in the day even, like he's just an incredible judge of talent. So like when we're talking about Braun versus Dom, no. When we're comparing Braun to Luger, who was way worse in the ring, or anybody else has been talked about over the past.
I don't know that Luger was way worse, to be honest. Luger had some good matches with Flair. Okay.
I meant at the age, because this is all predicated on the fact that Braun isn't the final form of who he's going to be, and so whatever. But putting that all aside, I agree with everything you guys said about that whole main event situation. But I'll go back to the beginning when Brandon mentioned the fact that they dress differently, and that's something that I usually don't pay attention to with Seth. Because he's always dressing outlandishly, but tonight it was ridiculous. Like it looked like he was wearing like a set piece off of the Golden Girls, as a.
It was Versace, so maybe.
Or like Blanche Devereaux's one of her outfits on the Golden Girls, and that's a joke for you, Wade. Since we're the same age ish, but it's just like this was so egregious how different he looked than the other guys. So I'm not going to ask for your comment. If you want to comment, you can. But I just never cared about Seth dressing weirdly until tonight, where Bronson's in all black, Braun's in black, and then his mysteriously white boots. I don't know why he's wearing white boots. But then you have this Miami Beach, Jackie Gleason Theater drapery going on with Seth Rollins. Anyway. So I just wanted to flag that I picked up on the same thing that Brandon did. But what I really wanted to bring up in short time is I think one of the reasons why this whole world championship situation is falling flat a bit is that except for Bronson Reed and Jey Uso, everybody's kind of a tweener. And this goes to your lament, Wade, for the past however many months, or not so much as now, but a few months ago and going back, where it's there's way too much tweener stuff going on. Is LA Knight, he's always been a tweener, but he was kind of dickish tonight, but then also friendly. Punk is, which I'll get to in a minute, Punk is getting a little bit more, tweenish. Braun Breaker, they chant, the dog chant, and he gets cheers, but he's clearly heel. Seth, they're singing his song. It's just everybody in this situation, except for the two I mentioned, are just in between. You don't know whether to cheer or to boo. What's going on? So that was my main thing that I want to bring up.
Yeah, you can defend each and every one of them. It's just it's too much, and it's too constant. What did you think of Punk tonight, Brandon? I thought it was sensible. Hey, it's every man for himself at the Clash, but in the meantime, we got to get there. I think he was speaking logically, but I didn't think LA Knight was crazy the way he handled things, and Jay kind of came across a little like oblivious, and Punk sort of was exasperated by it. I thought Punk had an okay night, but you have this issue of 3 baby faces going into against a heel, which is happening too often, where it's 2-on-1 or 3-on-1, and the heel looks sympathetic, and I think that helped Naomi actually get some sympathy in some of her situations. So I don't know. Yeah, your thoughts on the broad bill? I mean, you have to tell the story they're telling. 3 baby faces trying to survive against this faction who outnumber them. In and of itself, it makes sense, but you are ultimately trying to tell the story of, like all 3 of these guys, pick your favorite, but you kind of end up in this tough spot where within one segment you're siding with one or the other, and I just don't think people tune into wrestling to have the dilemmas of whether they are rooting for one person or another to win a world title. I think there's too much of that.
And you know that they're going to handle that by having Breaker and Reed interfere throughout that entire 4-way match, which is going to turn the whole thing into a mess. And that's their answer to this, to make it so that it is not a 3-on-1 situation with 3 baby faces against 1 heel. The faction's going to get involved, and it's just going to be an overbooked mess. I mean, you can see it coming from a mile away.
Whoever you're cheering for, Brandon, you're going to be frustrated with them at some point. Yeah.
I was fine with Knight and Punk tonight. I thought that they largely stuck to their guns, to their convictions, what I generally expect from their moral compass. Knight is an egomaniac, a blowhard, always has been. Fans like him for it. He's in that role. He has legitimate grievances with Punk for Punk getting involved in his business and in the weeks prior. Punk is trying to be level-headed, but he's CM Punk. You kind of know that he's going to pop off at some point. Jey Uso, to your point, Wade, sort of oblivious to the whole thing, but also really wants to win the world title, is more go along, get along with the other baby faces when it suits him in this particular instance. So I was okay with the presentation of each of those 3. Where I really agree with you, though, Danny, is Seth Rollins and Braun Breaker. Braun is a heel, but he plays into the barking. He has the catchphrases, the whole 9 yards. They're not taking anything away from his presentation or his character to make you boo him. And the same exact thing goes for Seth Rollins. Seth has not changed in the slightest since joining up with Paul Heyman. And I made that point at the top of the show. Seth is the same character that he was leading up to WrestleMania. He's just fighting baby faces now. That's really the only difference with Seth. And to me, if you want to really go all in on the heel work here, especially if you do view this as a shorter term angle, like we've kind of been talking about, where we've been talking about the notion that the chemistry isn't really there. They have bigger things planned for Braun. Maybe this is a more short-term thing. And if that's the case, then why not have Seth pull back on the Versace suits and take away the theme music for now?
Yep.
Because if you give that back to him the moment he's a babyface again, it's going to get a huge pop. And it's a return to form to the Seth Rollins that people know and love. And there's a strong differentiation between the Seth Rollins that is the babyface that we know and love and the Seth Rollins that is the smarmy heel with Paul Heyman. But we're not getting that right now.
Yep. All right, Danny, what else? I can't hear you, Danny. Can you hear him?
So, I muted myself.
Okay,
I muted myself. My God.
You're back.
I agree with everything you just said, Brandon. And to not belabor the point, I will just move on to the Punk stuff more specifically. Like, I've been going on this for like 4 months now. I guess 3 months now. And it's just today, the thing that really got me was he knocks LA Knight off the apron. And then the camera's right there to get his facial expression of like, whoops, oh, my bad, you know? And like the way WWE produces, like that doesn't seem like an accident. And
the weird camera angle where you don't see the person about to pull the ref out of the ring because you're in so tight.
Right.
You should figure out a way to make things, because you can just tell, like when a wrestler wanders backstage after they're done talking and the camera just hovers on them, you know something else is about to happen. Completely unexpectedly and unforeseeable, but it's obviously scripted. They need to clean that stuff up. in the ring and out of the ring.
For example, the Sheamus and Rusev coming out of the back for, and it's just like, oh wow, I didn't expect you here, that kind of thing.
Or the Judgment Day going, where is Dom? And it's like, he's right there in your vision for the entire
5
time
feet to
you're
your
at.
left.
Yeah, that's worse. That's worse,
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah. I mean, it's just clean that stuff up. It's amateur hour, and it's a little extra work to clean it up. Not a lot. So just do it. It's not asking very much.
Well, I just meant in terms of the fact that, like, oh wow, they really got that shot of him doing that, and as what we've learned from WWE on Real, right? Like, a lot of these things are on purpose, and the other thing was that, like, obviously I'm a big Punk fan, but like when the save was going to happen for Jay, they didn't really chant for CM Punk, and then his music hit. And then he came out, and then once he fought off with Seth, the real chant was for Roman.
OTC,
and so like over time, Punk is doing more and more heelish things, as I've been saying for months now. And tonight was just another example of that. And I'm not gonna ask you to belabor that point, but I just want to ask a question.
I don't have time to belabor a point.
Exactly, and that's why I'm going to get to the point.
Yep.
Is I'm going to just simply ask a question so I can not keep calling in and talking about this. To both of you, clearly he's going to turn heel at a certain point. How many months?
Brandon, what do you think?
Just give me a prediction, and then I can call back in 8 months from now or a year from now or whatever. Just how many months?
I don't know. I get your point. I'm not saying that they're not going in this direction. I think you're absolutely right. When we see something on camera and it looks that deliberate, it is deliberate. They're doing it for a reason. I also think that it can be pretty easily explained away if they want to go that direction. I think that they're probably going to give Punk some leeway on what he wants to do, and if he feels like this is still connecting in a significant way, they might just stick with it. I don't know.
Is it more likely Heyman manages a heel Punk against a babyface Braun Breaker, or Heyman manages a heel Braun Breaker against a babyface Punk at WrestleMania or SummerSlam next year?
I would go with the latter.
So, Danny, my over-under for a Punk heel turn is going to be post-WrestleMania, so I'll say 9 months.
Sweet. All right, and just to answer Darrell there, that was actually one of the things I was going to point out in this argument if I had more time, which was just the fact that he's going around now, like both to Jay and to LA Knight, saying, hey, be my friend, and they're turning him down, right? And it's like, that could be some kind of impetus. But anyway, that's all I've got.
Cool, Danny, across my mind too, like Ryan Tolorio was, Punk is turning at the Rumble in Saudi, so maybe it cost Sammy a chance to win through underhanded tactics. I could see Punk getting frustrated because it plays into his natural personality, which is he can be right and driven. He's driven mad when he feels he's right and other people don't see his way. And if they can tell that story, Punk can be believable in that role and tap into that. And so maybe it is, happening sooner, and maybe it could be as soon as Rumble, and he'll be a heel at WrestleMania next year. I can't rule it out. I think there's more to be done with Punk as a babyface, but if they start noticing reactions to him are going down, either because of the booking or despite the booking, they could accelerate it. I still lead to after WrestleMania because I think there's still more to tell babyface wise, but I don't know. I guess I would take the under before the over on that. I would take sooner rather than later, even though I established the over under, so I'm not supposed to do that. I'd probably take the under.
Yeah, and I just.
All right, we gotta run.
Yeah. Just part of me is just like incredibly waiting for all the promos that he could do as a heel on his Saudi Arabia turn, on his AEW stuff without mentioning AEW. Like I'm just waiting for it. But anyway, okay. So
thanks, Danny.
I'm done, and I just want to say number one, Brandon has really come into his own on Wrestling Night in America as a host. Like I watched from the beginning, and like he's gotten exponentially
you emailed every week and said, get rid of that guy, he sucks. So
if I ever wanted to email you, Wade, I would never do it. And then secondly, Wade, I'm through part 2 of 3 with Guy Evans, and it's just been incredible. And so everybody should go VIP, there's a Kevin Sullivan story there that I
Mhm.
didn't know. I just thought that he sequestered Hulk Hogan on the night that he went heel, but apparently there was some Linda Hogan things involved of why that might have happened. So I just want to encourage everybody to go VIP, and I'm out.
Thanks, Danny. Brandon, real quick, did you have a problem with given all the ECW wrestlers who died? And I need a 15-second answer, or I'll cut us off mid-sentence here. Did you have a problem with them joking about Tommy Dreamer not being dead?
No.
Okay. JB, and
I just saw Tommy Dreamer wrestle last week.
Yeah.
Funny enough.
So I'll just say I'll cover. JB's got an email. We'll cover it in the flagship tomorrow. So everybody check that out. But he brings that point up. He thought it just didn't land with the audience, and maybe wasn't worth saying on Global TV. All right. Thanks, everybody. We will touch tomorrow. Subscribe to Blue Logo Show. Search Wade Keller. Thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you next time.